Good afternoon, all. Thank you very much for joining. This is the very first partnership between Digital Boost and Visit Scotland with a particular focus on tourism. A recent survey carried out by the Scottish Tourism Emergency Response Group showed that you industry had two key priorities that you appreciated. One, very understandably, is funding to help you out in these very tough times. The second was the advice that was being provided by agencies. So with that in mind, we've created a series of 10 webinars, the next of which is on the 21st of January. That's about tourism marketing, what to do next, with a bit of how to thrown in, followed by a session on digital fundamentals on the 4th of February. I would encourage you to sign up to those as well. The other webinars will be on a twice monthly basis, and we will be publishing that soon. Today's session is how to adopt your tourism businesses using our research and insights gathering, and really to give you a picture of what the confidence of our consumers are and what the opportunities therein lie for you as a business. So it's very practical, and I'm glad to bring on our next presenter, Chris Greenwood, our Insights Manager for Visit Scotland. Finally, before I hand over to Chris, there is always opportunity for you to ask questions throughout this webinar. If you use your control panel to post the questions, we'll monitor those and we'll seek to answer as many of those as possible at the end of the session. I'll now hand over to Chris.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Firstly, thank you very much for the opportunity to present to you here. The Digital Boost programme has been an important part of Visit Scotland's delivery of experience across the board, and it's an honour for me to be able to contribute towards that. What I'd like to do over the next 45 minutes is go through how Visit Scotland uses its insights and how tourism businesses can use these to develop strategic planning and adapt to what is quite a challenging environment. As Patrick said, my name is Chris Greenwood. I'm Senior Tourism Insight Manager at Visit Scotland. And I think as we went through 2020 and as we go into 2021, I think we should recognise that this has been a very challenging time for business and for families and individuals, and we shouldn't lose recognition of those challenges. However, we are here to look forward. We are here to face challenges, and I think that with everything that's going on, there are still opportunities for development and growth. And certainly within consumers and within industry, we're seeing many different changes taking place that are really establishing themselves as the new normal. And these are going to provide certainly a new and dynamic business environment that we're going to be moving forward into. But as I said, we shouldn't lose sight of the current challenges that many people are facing today. That said, I will turn off my webcam and start the presentation. So you will have received in the invitation an outline of what to expect from this webinar, and that hasn't changed. I'll be following the structure that was explained. So look at the research that's been carried out so far and what that research has shown in terms of changing sentiment in terms of travellers, particularly domestic tourism, which has been a key driver of the tourism industry over the last 9 months. We'll have a quick look at some of the global trends and then the opportunities that those trends will present themselves. We'll look at the short to medium term outlook, and obviously to put that into the context of where we are currently, and then some practical actions that can be taken forwards on the back of everything that we've discussed so far. I think it's fair to say that 2020 was devastating for the tourism industry, and certainly the latest Scottish Tourism Emergency Response Group business survey painted a very sombre picture. Around about a fifth of businesses are still in operation, have no cash reserves left, and 50% only have cash to last them the next 3 to 6 months. We've seen also that around about 18% of businesses stating that they don't qualify for any financial support has been a particular challenge for the industry as a whole. However, the industry survey showed that it wasn't all doom and gloom, and the businesses showing that they are adapting and changing to ride out the storm until we get back to the normal that we're hoping for. With that in mind, just under 3/4 believe that they'll see through the current crisis, although clearly that means that some won't, and we know that some businesses have already permanently closed. However, I think it's important to note that understanding visitor insights and developing strategies creates the agility to adapt and to be dynamic to this challenging environment that we're finding ourselves in. So if we move on to start looking at the research that's been carried out so far. So what Visit Scotland has done so far is conducted a series of studies. This should be put within the context of our traditional measurement of tourism has been conducted through doing visitor surveys. So the Office of National Statistics and the National Tourist Boards conduct an international and domestic tourism survey. The international survey, the international passenger survey, is conducted by the Office of National Statistics, and it takes place in airports, seaports, and the Eurostar terminals, where individuals are kind of intercepted as they arrive and depart, and they're asked questions about where they've come from, how much they've spent, where have they gone to, and that gives us an idea of international inbound and UK resident outbound travel. On the domestic side, we have an online survey which is done with a panel of individuals, households that are representative of the UK. And there are similar questions about how many overnight stays have taken place within the UK over a certain period of time. The outputs of those provide us with the volume and value of international and domestic tourism, along with quite a lot of rich information about the profile of the visitor, activities undertaken, types of transport used, and from that we can build up a picture. I think it will be appreciated that over the course of 2020 and with the coronavirus pandemic, the ability to do face-to-face surveys, or indeed the sensitivities of asking people during lockdown whether they've taken any overnight trips, has meant that those traditional measures of tourism have now been suspended and aren't currently taking place. So as our established longitudinal studies have ceased, Visit Scotland's looked to alternative ways of being able to gather information. The types of things that we've taken up so far include a COVID customer segmentation study. We've done a series of consumer sentiment research studies. We've undertaken some scenario planning, and we've continued with our regular environmental scanning and trend research. And I'll go on and explain the methodologies that are adopted in these various areas. So the first one we come to is customer segmentation. And what customer segmentation is it profiles the marketplace based on similar sort of criteria, such as it could be possibly demographics, it could be interests, it could be activities undertaken. And Visit Scotland has developed a well-established customer segmentation study based on interests. So you profile your marketplace. In this case, it's the UK consumer, and you can work out roughly based on that profile the approximate size of the market, where they're based, what their media habits are, all these different kinds of things. And it became clear that during the coronavirus pandemic, that that particular segmentation model, while still valid, had to adapt to the changing situation. So in collaboration with the other national tourist boards, Visit England and Visit Wales, a new segmentation model has developed based on the visitors' attitudes towards the crisis and their understanding of the current levels of lockdown and restrictions. The other piece of work that we've undertaken, and we've done this on a number of occasions, is a consumer sentiment survey. And this, again, has been done collaboratively at a UK level. And it started around the end of May and has continued through to January of 2021. The most recent publication that was produced was on the 5th of January. And this is a survey that goes out to a representative sample of the UK population, which is then scaled up. And it asks people about their travel intentions, and clearly when people were able to travel, that's sort of like, you know, July to December period of 2020. It was coming back with some quite interesting insights as to what people were planning, what they had done, areas of the country that they were interested in going to. And that could be fed through to the individual boards and their recovery plans, and fed through to individual businesses. As I said, we've run this multiple times over the course of the second half of 2020. And the information has been invaluable in being able to track changing behaviours as new restrictions come in and have been lifted. And it's also highlighted as best we can the proportion of the population that's been able to take trips over that time, and indeed what they've been doing. More recently, we've completed a scenario planning exercise, and scenario planning is particularly useful in terms of being able to develop strategies in particularly extreme events such as the pandemic that we're currently in at the moment. The scenarios were requested by STIRG, the Scottish Tourism Emergency Response Group. What we did was look at a series of possible environments that could develop over the course of the next 18 to 24 months. We provided the scenarios to STIRG for their strategic planning at a national level, and these were fed into Scottish Government planning as well. And what we were trying to do was not predict what the future should be or what we want the future to look like, but really identify the key factors that are going to determine what the world could become like, and therefore develop strategic plans related to those. We came up with 5 scenarios in the end, a baseline one, which is essentially what the world looked like in July of last year. So just as recovery happens, and within that baseline scenario, recognize that physical distancing would be a requirement, hygiene factor would be a requirement, and possible barriers to travel that are found within the consumer as well. And the two elements of the scenarios that we thought were most important related to whether businesses could operate or whether consumers were confident in traveling. And as a result of that, we developed a quadrant where you could sort of say, okay, well, if businesses are open and consumers are going to travel, that would be very much like pre-pandemic conditions. Whereas if you have a situation where maybe businesses are open, but consumers aren't confident in traveling, you end up with a situation similar to what was seen in the Highlands of Scotland during sort of late September and into October of last year, where there were localized lockdowns, particularly in the west of Scotland, Glasgow area. And of course, that meant that the market was unavailable to go and travel to these places. And therefore, you had businesses that were able to trade up in the Highlands areas, but they didn't have any customers that could actually go. This leads to the situation of, well, if you understand these different potential scenarios that can come up, what are the strategic plans that you are going to develop in each of these different scenarios? And therefore, you can become agile as the environment changes. So as we move from, say, that situation of the baseline scenario of everybody's able to trade and you've got a market to potentially being open, but you've got no customers, to then possibly a full lockdown. As a business, what are the plans you're going to build in response to each one of those changing environments, and how do you track how those things are changing over time? One of the other areas of data that we've been collecting is something that we've been doing for quite a long time, and that's environmental scanning and trends. Environmental scanning is really the ongoing tracking of trends and occurrences either within an organization or an industry sector, and really it looks at the internal and external environment and the factors that firstly create the environment in the first place, and secondly that are going to influence that. So from my particular situation, the team that I head up within the Visit Scotland research department, the Insight department, we're looking at tourism within Scotland. So understanding what the customer base is, what are the factors that are impacting on the product, the economy, the environment, the political situation, the technological situation. How are each of these different elements going to impact on tourism, and can we predict the trends that are going to be influential? So in light of the coronavirus pandemic, we developed a paper called Navigating the New Normal, or the post-COVID-19 consumer trends, and some of the elements of that paper are going to be discussed later on. So that said, those were the main areas of data that we've been collecting in light of the fact that our traditional measures have sort of gone by the wayside. But what does the data that we've collected actually indicate in terms of changes to behavior? Well, if we look at the COVID-19 segments, this is our new segmentation study. As I said, the segments are based on kind of attitudes, and really it's based on two key areas. Firstly is consumer attitudes to risk, and also the financial implication. And you can see that there are 5 segments that were developed, and these relates specifically to the UK domestic market. So the segments that were developed go from essentially those people who have a low attitude to risk, and they're possibly financially solvent at the moment. In this particular area, as it says here, that represents around about sort of 33% of the UK population, and therefore they're the ones who were most likely to take UK breaks. If we go down to the far end, we've got people who are much more risk averse and potentially have less disposable income, and they're representing around about 7% of the UK population, and therefore have a low likelihood of being able to take UK breaks. The segmentation study goes into much more detail about the profile of each of these groups, what their interests are. Certainly, we're seeing that we're definitely seeing a younger demographic, more group travel of those younger demographics were traveling during the latter half of 2020. But we also saw that there were a low risk averse older demographic, possibly ones that weren't shielding or didn't feel the need to shield, so like, you know, possibly a healthier older demographic with disposable income that were prepared to travel and had the time to travel as well. And they were, along with families, making up a large portion of the markets that were traveling within Scotland. I mentioned the consumer sentiment work, and I thought it would be interesting to show here the results that we saw for what people said they took trips during July and September. And again, this is for UK residents. This survey was taken, published in around about October of 2020, and covered that real sort of like, you know, the period between July and September, which really represented the most widely open part of the tourism sector. So what we can see is 30% of UK residents had taken a short break or holiday within the UK. And if you think that the UK population, I think, is estimated around about 60 million, that would give you an idea of how many breaks were taken. But we found that Scots residents were increasingly likely to take breaks within Scotland during that time. And you have to remember that during that period, we also saw that there were localized lockdowns throughout the UK, which prevented people from, say, England and Wales traveling up to Scotland and vice versa. Certainly holidays were predominantly the main reason for travel, and business travel with the advent of home working certainly declined significantly over that period. Also, I think there's an appreciation that meetings and conferences pretty much ceased during that period as well. We did see that for Scottish holidays, whilst hotels were a popular choice, it was within rural areas that service accommodation was more popular, and the challenges that faced accommodation providers within cities was certainly acute during that period. Self-catering, camping and caravanning were definitely popular for places within Scotland, and Scotland itself, along with the southwest of England, were two of the most popular areas that people went to. Certainly the predictions that we had about people who wanted to take breaks wanted to be in rural areas, outdoors, doing activities, adventure activities played out, and we saw that, or we were predicting that it was people who wanted kind of to be able to control their environment. So camping and caravanning and self-catering, where you are in control of your environment and able to have your own hygiene standards, regardless of the high standards that were being promoted by providers through the schemes that were being promoted. I think there was something within the psyche of the traveller about wanting to be able to know that they were in control of their sort of hygiene. As it says there, outdoors like mountains and coastal areas were exceptionally popular, more so than city regions, and I think we've seen the balance sort of play out in terms of news reports to reinforce this study. I mentioned that the latest study was published in January 2021, and I just wanted to show the impacts that the current lockdown has had on consumer behaviour. So, as part of the consumer sentiment work, there is a mood of the nation a section to the survey, and these are the results that are there. As of sort of September onwards, the proportion of the UK population that believe the worst is still to come steadily grew as localised lockdowns, the Welsh circuit breaker, and subsequent announcements prior to Christmas came in, and that's come up. And we saw by January that the proportion seeing, believing that the worst is still to come has almost doubled to 62% of the UK population. Also, we can see that 8% expect that things will return back to normal by the end of March. And the results that were published at the beginning of December saw that 14% of people believe that was the case. And to extend that out, 33% expect that returning close to normal will happen by the end of June. I think the current understanding amongst industry groups is that May is where they see the opportunities to reopen at the moment. Obviously, that is a fluid situation. Whilst the number of people who were looking forward to winter and spring breaks was at a marginally strong level prior to Christmas, that has now sort of declined in light of the situation we currently find ourselves in terms of lockdown. However, those that were saying that they were going to take winter and spring trips, and bear in mind that the survey that took place was prior to the lockdown being implemented over the Christmas period, said that Scotland, London, and the northwest, the southwest of England, Devon and Cornwall, remain the most popular destination. So Scotland is still seen as an attractive destination for trips within the mind of the potential traveller. However, the current situation means that those travellers are unable to move at the moment. Anyway, as it says, the winter trips are now unlikely to happen along with spring trips. However, it looks like it's going to continue to be kind of rural outdoor areas that remain popular as the type of place to go to. So it seems to be that there is that continuing desire to be in fresh air, wide open spaces, again about sort of control of your environment. In terms of what the scanning and trends are coming up, and I mentioned before what we define as the new normal, we're seeing that crisis and pandemics don't usually create new trends. What they do is they reinforce and accelerate trends that are already developing and in existence. And what we're finding is that consumer drivers that are developing during the pandemic that are going to define the new normal moving forward are those of convenience, reassurance, value, inspiration, and connection. And from an industry perspective, that means a need for innovation, agility, adaptation, flexibility, transparency, and collaboration. We're finding that localism is becoming an identifier and a strength and a differentiator. And by that, we mean people are looking for products and brands and destinations that are representative of the true nature of the place they're going to. Now, you can have international corporate brands that can adopt localism. And if you think about things like Hilton in Glasgow, it has within it images of Glasgow, Scotland. You know that you're in the Scottish Hilton or the Glasgow Hilton, as opposed to just a generic Hilton that is branded the same as it would be in Paris or Berlin or Shanghai or Sydney. And what we're finding is that visitors are increasingly being drawn to this, that they want to go somewhere and see the real destination and have a connection with it as well. So this brings us on to consumers and businesses being linked by social purpose. And certainly what the pandemic has brought out is that people are looking to brands and businesses that are demonstrating that they're supporting their local communities, and those businesses are getting the benefit because consumers then feel as though they want to support them by using their products and services, or going, if they're a tourism provider, going to them because they feel as though they are rewarding that social purpose that the business is given by supporting the local community. And that could be in terms of, the people that were providing meals to key workers, or, providing a safe space for people that are in crisis. So this then means that businesses certainly will be seen as the embodiment of the values and as a catalyst of change, and that can extend out into businesses' attitudes towards responsible tourism, sustainability, community support, and representation. So we see those as the key trends that are coming through. So we move on to the next part, which is what are the macro global trends that are currently coming through? Well, I refer to what I call the sustainable tourism dichotomy, and what the chart shows is the growth or the predicted growth in trips, and this goes from 1950, where international tourism arrivals was very, very small. And the predicted sort of growth is 1.8 billion trips taking place by 2030. So we've got this exponential growth in trips that are forecast to take place, and that's even with the impacts that we've seen, with the pandemic at the moment. So we've got this growth of people who want to travel, they want to see the world, and we have to combine that with the fact that at the same time, people are recognizing their travel has an impact. So, there is an interest in reducing carbon footprints. There's an interest in having a sustainable tourism. People want to look at alternatives like, taking trains over planes, maybe going to alternative destinations compared to what they traditionally did, maybe taking sort of city breaks. They're going to what could be described as secondary sites, or exploring or immersing themselves in culture and communities to understand the real destination. And what we're seeing is that people see these as opportunities for self-development and growth, and travel is a significant part of that. And certainly that's something that has really taken off over the course of 2020, as people have been driven to be inspired and develop, itineraries in their minds of what they want to do once they're able to travel again. So social media has been a key factor in that drive for inspiration and self-development and growth. We went through looking at some of the trends, but some of the behaviors that are going to be defining this new normal will be trust, which will be becoming smaller and more local. And as social distancing becomes more prevalent, people are relying more on social media. And of course, this has the possibility of creating greater polarization within society. However, as we move forwards, as providers, we can use this level of trust to be able to provide local levels of confidence. And this comes on to the second part of, like the move towards localization. We're talking about being sort of self-sustaining, and we find that the people tend to be consuming less and thinking more about provenance, and therefore being able to provide local produce, the stories behind the production of that is something that really motivates people, and therefore thinking about like changes in behavior as people are possibly cooking more, thinking more about the produce they're buying and the impact that their behaviors and purchases are having. This can be fed through into the messaging, and I mentioned before about the values that you as a provider can display will chime very well with the types of consumers that you want to appeal to. I think mental health and wellness. Wellness is a trend that's been developing for a number of years, but certainly come to the fore, and much more in the media is coming through about the mental health impact that the pandemic is producing, and therefore people will be looking for ways of being able to look towards wellness, and product development in those areas certainly would be something that many people will be looking for. And we talk about forest bathing, and we look towards kind of sort of sound trails that can be developed. The people can go out and just listen to the world around them, and this is something that is certainly a key developing behavior into the future. Anyway, all of this, small enterprises are very well suited to all of these behaviors, because they're the ones that can really demand and show that level of trust and localism that's coming by, because they're driven by reputation. And of course, enterprises are usually invested in the destination they're in, and that is what visitors want. They want to be wedded to the destination they're going to. And what is the outlook for the future? Well, we once had time is now a precious commodity. It's now going to become an asset, and we refer to slow tourism. And people want to travel less but travel better. It used to be that the transport element of a trip was an inconvenience just to get you there to your destination as quickly as possible. We're now finding that potentially people will see the travel element as a key part of that, as maybe people are taking long distance train journeys or looking at alternative transport methods that are maybe more sustainable in the future. We've covered over the trust between consumer and providers, certainly demonstrating the hygiene standards, which of course have now become like a standard as opposed to a differentiator. And people, we'll probably expect people wanting sort of like, bespoke products and personalization, curated travel that makes them feel as though they're getting something unique to them. And this is because obviously initially will have restrictions that mean that small group travel and private tours would be maybe the only things that can be provided. But in the future, I think there's this expectation that this will continue, and the curated travel will be a standard expectation. I think it's fair to say that there is a pent-up demand for leisure and travel, and once recovery and an opening up of trading comes in, I think there will be quite a few people looking for opportunities. Certainly, we can see that 33% of the UK population will be open to wanting to travel in that particular area very early on. And all this comes down to innovation and adaptation. So what are the trends that we can turn into opportunities? Well, we talk about sort of like, premium brands, like the large corporates. They can promote a high standards of health, safety, ethics, and customer service. And certainly one of the recent trends that I saw was with staff members maybe having to wear masks. There are small changes that can be made. So you can put the photograph of the face of the member of staff on their badge, so it provides more of a connection between staff and customers. Maybe investment in training, in greater interpretation of body language, both in terms of communication and reading, as facial sort of cues have been removed with mask wearing. But for smaller enterprises, there is the benefit of demonstrating the humanness that a small business can provide. And certainly early on in Italy, there were small accommodation providers, small hotels that were producing more of a club style product offering. So they felt they weren't able to open up all of the rooms, bedrooms, to customers because of being able to maintain physical distancing regulations. However, what they did was they increased the value of the product offering to a smaller number of people. So it was more of an exclusive product experience, and that's what we mean by that kind of intimate club style product offering. So what you had was low volume of visitors brought on by physical distancing, but a high value product to retain the revenues. We've mentioned premiumization, so like that personalization and bespoke service is something we're doing, but there's also that travel with purpose. We mentioned about demonstrated community support, and some of that is done, was done last year, as I mentioned, about sort of providing food to the homeless or to key workers. But you could also do it through, as we develop forwards, through rewilding, through wellness, through volunteering work, education opportunities to develop that need that the visitor wants of travel with purpose, offsetting the impacts, the sustainable impact that travel has in other ways of them sort of giving back either to themselves or to the community. Value for money and showing the values for money are going to be key as well, as people sort of reevaluate their attitudes towards consumerism. So being able to demonstrate your attitudes to your local community or to the environment would be another way of doing that. There's also that embracing ways of new thinking. Post the financial crisis in 2008, we saw things like Uber, Airbnb, and WhatsApp coming up as being these kind of game changers in terms of adoption of digital platforms in what were traditional areas and new models. So what are the new ways of thinking that we're going to see beyond here? We've also got how to address customer needs. We've seen that the domestic market and the family market are going to be some kind of key areas over the second half of last year, but it's going to be the case again moving forwards. It's unlikely that the international markets will be returning back initially. So Are people ready to adapt their product if it was primarily the international market that they were after? Very much the domestic market needs to be going forwards. You know, there's about packaging and collaboration, you know, working within the community and the industry to be able to provide that kind of bespoke package that people want from their trip. Engaging content, we mentioned about social media and the need to contain that regular engagement with people, because that's how they're gathering most of their information at the moment. So it's about being inspiring through imagery and stories and having regular content coming out, you know. And I think we should also mention about like just the going out to the industry and making sure that, you know, you're engaging with your destination marketing organizations and industry groups to share knowledge and networking. Some examples of what we've seen recently are here. Some that I'll draw you to are things like, you know, the Balmoral in Edinburgh. They had the curfew club, which, you know, as people were maybe nervous to go out and within the city, they were providing exclusive in-room experiences, from movie nights to whiskey tastings. You know, there was developing a product that met the needs of the visitor. Meldrum House and Fnab Castle, famous for setting up their pop-up pods for outdoor dining, which meant that they could you know, provide and cater for visitors. And we're also seeing growth in things like wild swimming, foraging workshops, and sort of like, you know, craft skills development, and these are things that are trending amongst users as well. So what's the short to medium term outlook? Well, I think it's easy to say that you know, the outlook is going to be positive, but clearly this isn't the best start to the year so far. The scenario planning that we did, really we could assume that we're in scenario 5, the 5 winters scenario, which is really kind of the equivalent of 3 to 5 quarters of low season performance. Back when we did this, we postulated that, you know, several major names are going to go into receivership, and obviously we've seen Debenhams fall to that. I think we'd like to say that, you know, when we see recovery, potentially, as I said, the industry is predicting kind of May time, although you know, we need to see how that pans out. That the reopening is going to be phased as it was in July of last year, and you know, we can see some of the headlines that are there, that, you know, it's an expectation the domestic market is going to be the one that's going to be moving forwards. So just to kind of finish up and summarize, you know, what are the best ways to position for sustainable recovery? Well, I think the first one is plan for the unthinkable. We have the scenario planning toolkit, which, you know, is on the VisitScotland.org website, and that will allow you to prepare for a range of responses to different situations. And, you know, this is the time to kind of think out the box and look for those game changers. You know, in the current situation, what can you do to diversify and adapt to you know, see through this current situation? And what do you need to prepare for the potential recovery that could be phased towards localized lockdowns, restricted markets in some areas, but the ability to trade? You know, what are the plans that you need to put in place for that? The environmental scanning, you know, monitoring trends, watching policy notices, being up to date, engaging with your destination management organization and business gateway to understand the issues that are coming up, and develop, you know, marketing tactics, and the next workshops that are coming up are going to cover those specific areas. But I would say the main ones will be flexible and be ready to move quickly, which is why strategic planning now will pay dividends in the future. You know, the ability to adapt to a changing environment is key to business survival. And, you know, being able to adopt digital tools and transformation again, one of the other workshops as part of this series is going to be key in understanding that. Thank you very much for your time. I'm going to hand back to Patrick now, and I'm going to take any questions and discussion that we might have at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Chris. That was lots of very good content. I do hope there was some nuggets that everyone can take away and look to apply. That's why we try to bring some practical examples for you to sort of think and work on. There's still time to ask some questions if you so wish, but there has been some coming through as Chris has been presented. So there's a few sort of technical questions which I'll come back to. But asking some other items. So Chris, one question was, do you think once, say, 50% of the UK population is vaccinated, that consumer behaviour will become more bold? And there's a second part to the question, and will vaccination certificates therefore become important?
Okay, so I think that there's a policy question in there, and there's a consumer trends question. I mentioned before that crisis and pandemic doesn't create new trends. It develops and accelerates existing trends. And I think with the rollout of the vaccine and as the population becomes inoculated, yes, confidence will grow, but I think we're seeing, you know, there will be an ongoing continuation of people to want to have like blended working, you know, working from home and partly in the office. So that will kind of continue. I think people will continue to want to recognize trust and value and, you know, the impact that their behaviors have had. I mean, if you think, there was a period of time last year where people were saying that they didn't want things to go back to the way they were. They liked the fact that, you know, the air was cleaner, you know, nature seemed to be blooming, and people were liking that. So, you know, those values could remain. But certainly, yes, I think the ability to maybe go without the unpredictability and uncertainty of lockdowns and things like that, that will certainly allow people to have greater freedom in their choice and behaviors. In terms of the vaccination certificates, yeah, I think that's going to be a requirement as we develop things like, you know, travel bubbles and air bridges and things like that. Certainly for the international market, that kind of proof that, you know, you're inoculated will be the guide that will allow you to travel and be safe.
Great. Another one, Chris, which is around the scenarios, and very understandable. Someone is asking, how are we supposed to conduct scenario planning in a time like this, when there's absolutely everything is up in the air? Okay, so
scenarios aren't forecasts. As I said, we're not trying to predict what the future will be. What they are is a series of potential futures. So what we try to do is identify what the key drivers and uncertainties of the current situation are now and over the timescale we were looking, which was 18 to 24 months. And from that, developed a series of scenarios. We developed 5 scenarios. And the idea is that if you monitor the factors that were used to develop the scenarios, you can then sort of say, okay, which scenario are we moving towards? And therefore, as I've done my strategic planning relating to all 5 scenarios, that's the playbook I need to get out and implement. And then as things change and possibly restrictions come in and another scenario appears to be developing out of that 5, you can get that playbook out and see what needs to be done to adapt and develop there. I would agree wholeheartedly, forecasting is almost impossible. We have absolutely no baseline information from which to project from. So anybody who sort of presents a forecast I would say that that's correct to the point of publication, and then all it takes is something to happen, in this unpredictable world that's going to make that forecast go. But I believe scenario planning is probably at least the best way of being able to prepare for uncertainty in the future.
Thanks, Chris. Another is, you touched on the overseas market. Is there any thought about when we might expect international visitors to return?
Well, so the rollout of vaccines will certainly be a factor in that. I think it's widely accepted that international travel won't be returning, within the next kind of 6 months. It would be ideal to see possibly towards the end of this year, all things being favourable. But I would recommend looking towards the United Nations World Tourism Organization website. They have a regular panel of experts, and one of the questions that's asked of them as part of a survey is when they see recovery in international travel coming through. And certainly the most recent survey that was issued this week, the timescales they were looking at was beginning of 2022 all the way through to 2024. So I think when those results are published, which should be in a couple of weeks' time, that would give an indication of what globally the tourism industry expects international comeback. I would like to think that during the summer last year, whilst we weren't seeing a huge volume of people flying internationally, we did see visitors from Germany, the Netherlands, France, places like that, coming with tourers, camper vans, and driving around Scotland. So it's possible that we may see some towards the tail end of the summer, all things being favourable, in that kind of format.
And sorry, another question, something around that is there a possibility with the green message going to take a back seat as COVID has resulted in a lot of single use and like such because of health and hygiene?
Yeah, I would offset that factor by saying people didn't want to go back, things to go back to normal. I think there was an appreciation of the cleaner environment that came out. The reports of the canals in Venice, being able to see fish, being able to see anything, I think was probably quite a good thing. The air quality improving, the reduction in traffic. I think there is an acceleration in the trend towards kind of responsible and sustainable tourism. People understand their impact a lot more. So I think there is an understanding of the importance of single-use products, for personal safety. But I think there's also that need for, like preference towards provenance, quality of, the food people are buying, that kind of thing. It all comes through to there's a greater responsibility, and I think that's the underlying trend that's in place.
Thanks, Chris. I think a couple of quick questions. One I'm going to answer myself is that funding has been asked for quite a lot, and it's and what Visit Scotland's role is in terms of helping and supporting industry get the funding as quickly and as much as possible. And we are in regular communication with the Scottish Government around the feedback that we're getting from industry in terms of where there has been misses, such things as personal bank accounts versus business accounts, etc. So that continues. That is an ongoing thing, which also we are in regular conversations with the chief executives of the sector representative bodies such as ASSC, ASVA, etc. So we can continue to work and channel those messages through to the Scottish Government. I think that one other question, again, it was, let me see, it was very early on in the session. I'm scrolling back up just for as a final one. do apologise. There's a so, and the other point, if you haven't picked it up, many people were looking for the link to Chris's to the research. I've sent that in the body of the question and answers if you want to copy and paste it. One very quick one, sorry, Chris, whilst I'm looking at that other question was, there was some technical questions about the size of the samples and the demographics of the sample and the geographic spread, if that could be quickly covered off just from people.
Yep. So the sample for the consumer survey was it was a UK representative population, and I think the sample was around about 2,500 respondents were used in each phase, which is within statistical parameters for that kind of study to be representative. I would say that the presentation, I'm sure, can be made available, and I've provided links within the presentation itself if people want to do that. But all the information is on VisitScotland.org within the COVID-19 pages. That includes the consumer sentiment research and all the previous ones, the segmentation studies, the trends work. All that is available, along with an industry survey that was conducted for Sturg as well. And the methodologies are all found within that documentation.
I'll wrap up now because I think we've kept everyone online for quite some time. And just as a final thing, there will be a follow-up email immediately as we leave this session. What we're doing is we're giving you an opportunity. All of this is linked to how well you can improve your digital footprint. So as an organization, we're offering each of you the opportunity to have a digital review from our team. The only asks from us is that 1 year of tourism business, which I think the majority of you on this webinar are. There is a commitment for you to carry out some actions out of the advice that we would give to you. So look out for this. It will arrive in your inbox immediately after this session. And thank you all for coming on to this. I trust and hope you got plenty from it. And I'll try and smile a bit more often as someone made a comment to me during the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you very much.